Good evening. Sorry we had some last-minute audiovisual issues, so we're almost on time to start with. Those of you who don't know, I'm Jay Knopfsinger. I'm the president of the Guild this year. Happy to have so many of you here. I think we have a nice program for you and all kinds of other, there have been several things that just came up tonight that hopefully will flow into the program that I found out, some extra news and so on. So we'll see how things go. So go ahead. Every month we have a show and tell, and people who bring things in to show and talk about them and so on have placed them on the table up here, and that will be towards the end of the meeting. Okay, usually we start by introducing new members or visitors. So are there any new members or visitors here tonight? If so, put a hand up. Just starting on the front.
I'm Joe Fossick and started out carving, woodworking several years ago. Got into carving, turning, and when I moved here, about 13 Woodworkers Guild anywhere within the city limits of St. Louis, and nobody knew anything. Well, last week, Bob told me all about it, so here I am, Joe Fossick, glad to be here.
All right, welcome.
Welcome. We're trying to do something about that, about people who want to, if there's a guild, to have that not be a mystery in the future. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Fran Field, and I met some of the gentlemen that are here over at the International Wood Collectors Society a few weeks ago, and they talked about this guild. And I got out of woodworking back in the 80s, and then wives, kids, dogs, parakeets, all that stuff got in the way. 40 years later, I'm getting back in, so I thought I'd get started here. Thanks.
Welcome.
Ben Bergman. I guess I first got interested in woodworking when I was in 8th grade in 1959, and we had a shop class. And I've been, ever since then, on and off, and then I married my wife, and her father was a carpenter. And so he taught me a lot of things, but things that he didn't teach me is why I'm here, is the mortise and tenon and dovetails and things of that nature. And so I went surfing the internet, and that's how I found this organization.
Welcome. Going back.
And Mr. Bergman is signed up for fundamentals.
Congrats. You're going to learn dovetails, sir, from the expert.
Go ahead and stand up, Brian.
Hello, I'm my uncle's a Shriner, and he said, hey, they have this meeting there, so I'm here.
All right.
So thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us. You want to stand up for me? Sure.
Hi, my name's Mark Ehrman, my wife of 35 years, and I live in St. Charles. I've been a woodworking hobbyist for a long time, done mostly cabinetry and stuff like that. I see the guild table at the woodworking shows from time to time. I've always been intrigued. I actually saw your meeting on YouTube the July meeting or June meeting on YouTube, and again, I was intrigued and thought I'd show up and see what it was all about. So here I am.
Congrats. Welcome.
All right, next. Okay, usually we at least quickly or as much as we can to let you know what's going on in the future. So Bill Shukot is going to talk about some upcoming classes that are available to you, especially to the new people who don't know about them as much. So
The first one isn't exactly a class, but we're having our annual picnic. It's over at Faust Park in picnic area number 2. If you're interested in coming, please sign up. So if you don't sign up, there's not going to be any fried chicken for you. Picnic area 2 is near the carousel if you park over in that area, which is the opposite side of the occupied part of the park from the east side parking. After lunch, we're going to have a tour of historic buildings, and I understand some of our members that have worked on those buildings are going to lead that tour. So once again, please sign up on the website. Next. Upcoming classes. This coming Sunday is the beginning of a new fundamentals class. When I wrote this, there were 10 members signed up, and there are now 11. Making a resin table. July 30th is the last of the fundamentals class that's almost done. August. We're going to have a class on, if you don't have a bench, we're going to show you how to build a sturdy bench that you can plane on, same construction as my bench. August 12th, there's a shorty class on bandsaw for the new members. Is that right?
I was going to
Raising
say
your
that's
hand.
mine. It's
Yeah,
gonna be, yeah.
okay. Yeah, Jay's going to teach that one. For the visitors and new members, the shorty classes happen on a Saturday. I think they're all Saturdays. Between 8 and 9, open shop starts at 9 o'clock. So the monitor who's on duty for that morning teaches a 1-hour session on one topic. This one's on bandsaw. There have been some others on table saw, joiner, planer, etc.
I talked to Brad Bernhard about a shorty class for the new sharpening system that we have in the shop. We've got a new diamond wheel sharpening system for lathe tools, and Brad helped me set that up, and he said he would run a shorty class. I think that one is his next session for the shop monitor is in October, and I believe it is a Sunday. But he said he'd be willing to do it again another time as well.
I'll get with him and we'll get that on the website. More fundamentals class, another shorty class on the drill press, and Mike Stoll is going to teach a class, and you'll come away from that class in one day with a Moxon vise. We are forming a training committee, and we're looking for volunteers. Preferably, if you volunteer, you'll also volunteer to teach. But even if you don't want to teach, and I know there's some members of the guild that don't like to stand up in front of a group and teach, you can see that Jay and I like this standing up stuff. In the past, I've tended to schedule classes maybe 6 months out, but at this point, 2023 is pretty well full, other than a day like September 2 on Labor Day weekend, which I try and stay away from. But I would sure like some volunteers. Having other perspectives is very helpful. I'm also looking for volunteers to teach classes. The classes typically fall in two categories: in skill building, how to saw a dovetail, how to make a mortise and tenon joint, how to do veneer work, skill building, and then there are project classes, like the class on building a bench. There have been classes on making chairs before. If you want a really ambitious one, you got to join fundamentals, and then you get to build a chest. So contact Bill Shucott, that's me, if you're interested. You can either email me if you can find my email number, or just send it to vicepresident@slwg.org, and that'll get it to me. I think that's it.
Any questions for Bill? Thank you, Bill. Upcoming presentations, that are the monthly presentations, the monthly meeting presentations, like that we're going to be having tonight. So Bob Ryan is in charge of that.
Well, I know in August we're going to have Rich Wiseman is going to be talking about shipbuilding, and it's like model shipbuilding, like you'd find in a bottle or some other farm, and that's going to be next month. And I believe the month after that, oh, there we go. I don't need my book after all.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next month after that, we have a guy coming in talking about furniture building, and he's going to be talking about glue-ups and just the whole process of building something. And then in October, we have a lady coming from the St. Charles Historical Society. She was a tough one to get to, I'm going to tell you. But she's going to be talking about some of the homes that they, hopefully some of the woodworking and putting on a presentation on that. So that ought to be a very interesting presentation by her. And then November, I know some of us have gone out to Quinn Saw, but that's a really interesting company, and they sharpen all of our blades. And he's going to be coming in and showing us how they go about doing that. So that ought to be very, very, very interesting as well. So that's what we got coming up through November. Then we got some other stuff next year that we got all planned out, but we'll tell you about that then. So
Thank you, Bob.
you're welcome.
This is only there to remind me to do it for next month because it was in last month's thing and we forgot to do it this month. So we're going to have a special show and tell with samples of past new holiday gift ideas for other members to see or to prepare for the upcoming holiday season. Well, this is July. Next month will be August. So I think that would be kind of a neat thing to do. We have a separate discussion about the holiday Christmas toy program that we already have in place. But I think it would be kind of neat to have several people come up with show and tells. A lot of people make things, little things and so on for Christmas presents. And so if you kind of keep that in mind, to be able to put that into your schedule to bring those things in for show and tell, that'll be an extra kind of little special part of the show and tell next month. Okay? Okay, community outreach. Rich is here, isn't he? No, okay. Dan Linder is going to be talking about that. The toy program, which is the longest running program that we have in place. So,
yeah,
Dan.
Rich isn't here this evening, but tonight we gathered 332 toys. So we appreciate everyone that brought toys tonight and in the months to come. So thank you.
Amazing. And the Christmas toy program I mentioned, Wayne Humphrey is in charge of that. So
We're building toys for holiday distribution on the first and third Fridays out at the shops. We'll be out there tomorrow between 10 and 2. It's a great way for new members, inexperienced members, to learn how to use some of the equipment, just get a feel for the equipment and work on your skills. And if you want to build them at home, if you've got a shop there, see me. We can provide you with some patterns and wheels and even the wood if you need that. So there's lots going on. We've donated 200 toys to Toys for Tots about a week ago for mid-year distribution. We've got another 500 in inventory, looking forward to the end of the year. And then we've got that's going to leave us about 500 to 700 short of what our goal is. It's somewhere between 12 and 1,400 toys is what we'd like to be able to pass out for distribution. So if you'd like to build some toys at home, see me or create your own ideas. Just a couple of things that are being built. We've got large trucks and trailers. Paul built these at home. This is all wood that was donated to the guild that these are made out of. Little robots are made with scrap materials that Linda and Don Turner have around the house, and Linda's made a bunch of those. And if you've got little scrap 2x4s around there, it's easy to make a little tractor, trailer, little car to go on the top of it. We've got the wheels for all of that. So lots of things going on for holiday toy distribution, and we'd appreciate some help if you can build some at home. We've also got coming up in Christmas time, the Shriners do I think it's called Festival of Trees. We participated in that last year, and we assume that we're going to be participating in that again this year. We haven't heard anything different. So they put a tree out, and we put a bunch of wooden items that we've made there. If you can turn a bowl, if you can make some salt and pepper shakers, if you can build some nice toys, if you've got anything else that's made out of wood and related materials that could be put under that tree, it's a fundraiser for the Shriners. And we would need all of that turned in by the November meeting
this year. So think about that, and while you're down in the shop wondering what to do, maybe create something for that. It's a good charitable organization.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay, the newest community outreach program that we entered into is working in partnership with the St. Louis Astronomical Society, who has a program where they let libraries around the metropolitan area purchase a telescope at a very nominal, their special price that they get and so on, which comes with, Don just hold the platform that the telescope is still at my house right now, but this platform is what we're involved in, because they have about 800 and some of these telescopes out in various libraries around the community. I found out that the city I live in, O'Fallon, Illinois, has 5 of them. I did not know that in our own library. Well, occasionally somebody will drop that sucker, including the telescope. Fortunately, the telescopes have never broken, but the bases have broken several times. The most common part to break is the big thing on the back there, that shape and so on. The second one is the triangular shaped thing that goes around that the feet are on. So what they asked us was, could we provide for them replacement parts for each of those 4 parts so they don't have to spend a whole lot of money and so on getting the actual ones and so on. And so that's what we kind of volunteered to do. So Don Turner took upon himself and other people who have CNC experience the idea of getting started with this, because obviously we needed the one that they have as a model, and Don with his CNC machine and so on, and others have been involved, has come up with templates. Now I told you one of my main goals for this year is to have more of you become more active in the guild by doing things, volunteering for things and so on. So here's an example. So he used the CNC machine. He came up with these templates that can be used now to actually build the actual parts. We determined, I think, that the width, the thickness of these pieces is 5/8 of an inch. So the building one of those parts, to me, would be where I think poplar is a really good wood. Those are made out of crap wafer wood or whatever, which is why they splinter and fall apart when they get dropped and so on. So we're going to use a real wood. So poplar, kind of a semi-soft versus hardwood, readily available. But several of those things are more than 11 1/4 inches. So a 1 by 12 won't quite hack it on a couple of the pieces and so on. So if you get, it's a poplar, and by the way, the Astronomical Society will reimburse the cost of material. So if you yourself are buying some poplar or something like that, you'll be reimbursed for that. So if you glued up a couple pieces so that what's the widest piece again?
I think the widest is just under 14, like
about 14 inches or so.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to glue a piece on this, and then this has a little less width, the circle here. But these templates, I just made these out of masonite, and then I sealed the sides of them. So the intent here was, yeah, the CNC guys can make these, but we wanted other people to be able to do it with a bandsaw or a scroll saw. So these templates give you that opportunity to do that. And so these holes are all pre-drilled. So if you drill the holes in the right place and all, they'll fit right into this, and so they can create replacement parts. But the idea is to get everyone to participate. So I didn't make these out of the CNC. We want other people to be involved and make these parts. So I've got 3 of these and a whole ton of these, because I could get more of them out of what I had laying around. And I happen to have enough for these. These are critical parts that break a lot. So, and then I will also send directions, because yes, there's little holes here that go all the way through, but those are the drill holes, for example, for these feet. Well, you don't want it to go all the way through, you just want it to go part way through. So I'll have to provide some directions on how far to drill the holes and so on. And then you paint them black, and I think if you make them out of poplar, if it takes a trip to the ground, it's probably not going to break quite as easy. Even if it does, we'll have parts for them. So
Thank you so much,
so
Tom.
yeah, so those are it, and that hopefully we can get some folks to come out and make a few parts and have some fun doing it.
So the process would be to get some poplar, like 1 by 12s, and add on whatever we need, and then there's your template. You can rough cut outside the line and so on. Then what I would use would be a template router bit and so on that will actually, with the template in place, that would actually router it off right to the exact dimension of the other thing. That's how I would do it, but other people can do however they want to. We're looking for volunteers, so we need people to come up and take some of these templates that have been made nicely by Don and so on to get us started in this, to provide some replacement parts. Any questions about that?
How many, in terms of numbers, how many pieces should people be making?
Hey, if you make 2 or 3 or something like that, because right now there's 2 of those pieces that have never been broke. Okay, so we don't need many of those. 2 of them are the ones that tend to break. And we just want to get them. I mean, if we gave them 10 each of especially the 2 that have broken a lot, I'm sure they would be perfectly happy about that. That we're talking about all the people that are making them, about 10 or so each is what we're kind of talking about. That makes sense then? All right. Any other questions?
Jay, will the plans have how to paint them, what color to paint them? Are we going to use the same paint, or is that going to be coordinated
no.
somehow?
I talked them into, we will have nothing to do with it's painted black. They are in charge of painting them as well as assembling them. All we are doing is making the parts. No painting involved. Okay, any other questions? So please come up and show your interest here. Home Sweet Home program, Tom might say a few words, but then we actually have the video to show then as well, Tom.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. No problem. Home Sweet Home, for the new people, we get donated wood that we use to make small tables, end tables, coffee tables, and nightstands. So to kind of help explain the process that we go through to acquire the wood and where the tables go, Hal Donovan, our director and chief producer over there, filmed a short video. So everybody take a look.
The Food Crafters of America offered their white oak cutoffs to the St. Louis Woodworkers Guild. The Guild members contribute their time and talent to create hand-built tables from this wood, which are distributed to underserved families by Home Sweet Home.
Hi, I'm Dan Setley. I'm the owner of Food Crafters of America. We craft fooders. You probably don't know what a fooder is. It is the Flemish word for big oak tank. We send this to breweries and wineries all over the world. Here's the oak as it comes in from the mill. All of our wood comes from Mueller Brothers Timber in Old Monroe. It's all Missouri white oak. They harvest within about 100 miles. But this is how it comes. This is all cut 2 years ago, and it's ready to rip as we get orders. We do the log selection and get all that going. Here's an example of some wood that's been ripped to size. These are a few different widths. Every diameter we have, which is 5 different ones we work with, has 2 different profiles, 2 different widths that need to be cut for that. You'll see on this pile here, they're actually marked which way is up, because we make sure that all knots and imperfections are actually to the outside where they'll be seen by people. Because, opposite of cabinet making, we want the inside of the vessel to be perfect so the beer doesn't touch the knots. We don't care if people see the knots, it doesn't matter to us. All right, this is our stave cutting station. This is where everything gets cut to length. We have story sticks here on the wall from pretty much every fooder, every different size and shape we've built for the last 6 years probably. Any guy in the shop can grab one of these and they'll know exactly how to make the fooder. So for instance, this is a 77-inch diameter 30-barrel horizontal, which is a very specific size, and it shows them how long the stave is going to be, shows them where the bands go, where the ports go, all that stuff explained on one short thing. We make oak tanks in 6 different diameters, any size from 500 liters all the way up to the biggest we've ever done is 10,000 gallons. We do standard vertical ones, horizontal ones, egg-shaped, oval-shaped, and everything's custom and made to fit the brewery, winery, distillery's process and aesthetics, whatever they need. Our needs are very specific, so we do have a fair amount of waste, and we just hate throwing it away. So I was really glad that we found the St. Louis Woodworkers Guild, and you guys are able to put our scraps to good use and make something beautiful out of it.
Home Sweet Home is a nonprofit furniture bank. We take donated furniture and household items, and then we put it into our warehouse, and we partner with 60 different organizations here in town who refer families to us. Our mission is to give those families dignity and pride in their lives by providing furniture and household items. So we take the donated furniture. The clients, the special part is that they get to come and they get to pick out their own items. So they get to say, I like that table, I don't like that one. And then our team delivers it to them. And then we do that every day. Home Sweet Home has been around for almost 8 years now and been able to serve almost 4,700 families. We have a staff of about 20. Half of those are office staff, half of those are movers, and then we have a volunteer crew of probably more than 700 people a year. So part of our mission here at Home Sweet Home is to also keep as much out of the landfill as possible. So we were really excited to hear about the Fooder Crafters of America and their donation to the Woodworkers Guild. Being able to keep more items out of the landfill, put them to good use, and give families a more comfortable place to call home just makes our heart so happy. We are really grateful for the support of the Woodworkers Guild. I think in just over a year that we've been working together, you guys have built 129 tables for our families. And so it's just really exciting to get to give those tables to them. And we appreciate your support in making that happen and look forward to working together for a long, long time.
Yeah, definitely thanks to Hal for taking the time at both locations. Took about 2 to 3 hours on the filming, but I think Cal probably spent another 2 or 3 hours doing the editing. So this is out on YouTube, and it's a good thing for the Guild. It also helps with the folks that participate with us, Home Sweet Home and the Fooder Crafters. If you're interested in getting involved in the program, I have wood in the back of my truck here tonight. There are plans on our website under community service. So you can go there, you can take a look. We've got end table, coffee table, and I think a nightstand plans. So you can build them to the plans, or you can come up with your own design. Just try to keep it in the cube or the space that the tables would typically take up. So it's a good program, as all our programs are for the community service. It helps you build your skills. It gets you involved in the Guild. And you're not going to win any awards with your tables, but you're going to help somebody out. And they're very, very grateful for our contributions. So like I said before, we've contributed 131 tables over about a 15-month period. Our goal for this year is going to be 100 tables. We've built 29. And I'm picking up 3 tonight, so we're at 32. So everybody try to get involved. If you've got questions, see me or see any of the board members. And it's our newest program, but it's really a good program for us to get involved in.
Okay, something that it wasn't on the program here is Steve, is it Botkin? That's how you pronounce it? Steve, our resident Santa Claus over here. He's a member of the Turner Society, and he volunteered. We had a non-member have somebody, the dad or the husband passed away, and he was apparently a wood carver, although it seems like he was more of a power wood carver than a hand wood carver. So she, the lady, brought in all the tools and so on that he had, and Steve was kind enough to look at what she had and put actually prices on each of the things. There are 2 large containers up here in the front, so I'd rather wait till at the end of the meeting. But anybody who has any interest on some wood turning tools, at least look through and see what they have. I think you'll find some really good bargains. I have first dibs on 2 of the draw knives. I haven't even looked to see what he put on those. But so any questions about that? They'll be right up here in front and so on. Thank you so much, Steve. All right, so upcoming survey and summer build program. So Todd Martin.
Yes, so Jay talked about this last time, I believe. It's important to collect information on our guild members' needs and interests. You heard a lot from Bill about all of the classes and all of the things that we're looking to provide for you guys. And we want to make sure that these are meeting your needs and exceeding your expectations. One of the things that we wanted to do is send out a survey. In fact, that survey just went out at 7 o'clock this evening, so you may have already gotten it. I encourage you to go ahead and take the survey. The more folks that take it, the more information we have and a more holistic data collection effort will be resulting from that. So it went out to all of the folks that are subscribed to the newsletter. So that includes the 350 members plus some of our friends of the guild, former members and so on. So it's a very basic survey. It has 20 questions. It averages about 5 to 7 minutes to complete. It's pretty easy to go through. There's a combination of questions, yes or no questions. There's ranges and scales on a scale of 1 to 5, right? Multiple choice, checking several boxes that might meet or tell us more about yourself that you see is appropriate to you. And there are a few questions in there with open text where you can type in information or add content to those questions. So again, really important. We really want to get a lot of responses out of this, and a lot of the questions in there are geared towards the summer skill builder program that we kind of talked about a little bit. We're really looking to see if this is something of interest to the guild and whether or not it's worth pursuing. All of the work that the board puts in to put on these classes, it takes a fair amount of effort, and we don't want to just do that if there's not really interest, right? So we want to make sure that these are things of interest, and so I think we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we want to do this is obviously we need to know more about you. The Summer Skill Builder program, and I'll get into in a little bit, is an alternative that's offered for maybe folks that aren't retired, that have jobs during the day or have busy summer schedules with their families that might be younger. So we're looking at ways to explore our demographic of the membership and make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our members. So the other, some of the questions you might find in the survey ask about, what is our need with regard to a shop? Is it sufficient right now? Do we have enough space? Are we meeting the needs of the guild members and so on? So this is really what we're driving toward. And Jay even mentioned earlier, we really want to increase our volunteerism. I think we may have mentioned, we went to the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild last month and visited with them. They're a membership as old as ours. Their guild is about 900 members strong. They're a little bit larger than us. They desperately depend on their volunteers, and they have a much deeper bench of volunteers than we do. So we took that lesson learned, and we're looking to try to expand upon that. And that's one of Jay's missions in his presidency, to try to increase that. So we'll go to the next slide. So the Summer Skill Builder series is a concept that I sort of came up with looking at folks that don't have time to spend Saturdays. These folks are typically maybe working already, and like I said, but the reason why we want to look at this is the Home Sweet Home Table program that Tom just talked about. we're looking to do more in 2023. We've had some resounding success, as you guys just saw from the video. We got the new telescope-based program coming in. We've got a lot of opportunity to blend mentorship and outreach and instructional programs with mentors. And I got Mr. Bronson back there to thank for handling our mentorship program, and we're glad to see you back, John. Thanks. So we're certainly looking forward to bridging some of these concepts and some of these programs together so that they all kind of work in concert, whether it's mentorship, outreach, training, and instruction, and bringing that all together into one kind of program is really the focus of this opportunity. One of the things that we're looking at doing is when do we want to offer these classes, right? So we're looking at establishing much shorter sessions, smaller, more frequent meetings. So we're looking at maybe breaking these down into 4-week blocks of classes, and these would run only during the summertime, hence the name, Summer Skill Builder, right? So between Memorial and Labor Day, we have daylight savings time. It stays light out much later. It's maybe 7:30, we're still light. So the park, where the shop is, has limitations. They close at sundown or just after sundown. So we don't want to be in the park in the winter with very little heat, running the dust collection system with our neighbors next door complaining about a jet engine taking off at 8:30 at night over there. So we're going to look at running these during the summertime in June through September. A 4-week session could be one project, whether it's building something like this or one of the other home sweet home tables. It could be even building one of the telescope stands. We can offer a variety of options there. And break them down into 4-week sessions. We would meet once a week, maybe one weeknight during the week on a Thursday, not a Tuesday, because there's concerts going on at the park on Tuesday nights during the summertime. So there are opportunities for us to maybe meet in the evenings, 6 to 8 p.m., for example. That would bode well for someone like myself 10 years ago when my kids were playing softball, baseball, soccer. I'm running around all weekend long, and the summer times are busy. I'm traveling and going on vacation with the family. I don't have a lot of Saturdays to burn. So this would be an opportunity for somebody who may be busy during the weekends to spend some time doing what they love when they don't have a lot of spare time. A couple hours during the week, right? So that's the when. Let's go to the next slide. The structure of how this gets executed and who would be developing this. We're looking at maybe recruiting more volunteers. We're going to call them veterans or fellows, right? So we love to be able to encourage some of our veteran members to get involved and mentor our newbies, right, or the folks that are signing up to take these classes. And I think the fellows are designed to really work hand in hand with some of the students. So we'll have sort of a class lead and a fellow, and it'll be a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 kind of ratio where you're much more hands-on. Someone who's very new at building something simple like this, and they're maybe intimidated by a glue up or intimidated by making cuts on a table. This could be structured in such a way where that fellow could say, let me show you how to do it. This is how you do it. Now you try one, right? So it's much more tactile, and you get much more support from your fellow versus getting a set of plans and say, here you go, good luck, have fun with it, do the best you can. So this is really intended to be something maybe for someone who is new and maybe somewhere in between the beginners class and the fundamentals class. And again, for some of the folks that may have busy schedules that may not be able to commit a Saturday for the next 3 or 4 months, okay? So I'll pause there for a minute. Any questions so far? Kind of breezing through this. So that's what we're thinking about. It again, it goes back to the survey. The Skill Builder series is something we're considering. It's not something baked and in stone right now. We want to get that data back from the survey to really assess what the level of interest is from the group. So maybe show of hands. Are there folks in the room that see that is there interest in the room in a summer Skill Builder program in general? Okay, 20-30%. Okay, good deal. So that's all I had to say, Jerry. Do you
Thanks,
have
Todd.
anything further to add? Or
No,
any questions?
I feel strongly about this survey. I can't tell you how many times that I've been a member that somebody has said, I wish I knew how many people in the guild where I could go to ask questions about finishing or about dovetails or whatever. So one of the benefits of coming up with some of the information we're going to be coming up with on the survey is to be able to develop that kind of list. We're not talking about experts, we're talking about just people who you could go to with questions about various forms of woodworking and so on. So I can vouch, since he did send this out to the board members earlier, it takes 5 or 6 minutes, really. I mean, you got 5 or 6 minutes, so please, there's nothing more important when a survey is done than having people participate. You don't want to have 10% of the guild is all that really is participating, or the data won't be that helpful then, though. So please, 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 5 to 6 minutes, guarantee you. I did it myself, though.
So again, the sooner you guys get your surveys in, I'd love to go home tonight and come in the morning, open that thing up and see, 671 responses, right? So go ahead and knock it out tonight, or before you go to bed. That would be awesome. I'd love to see hundreds come in by by tomorrow morning. That'd be awesome. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, next. Suggested St. Louis Woodworkers Guild bylaws revisions to be voted on at the August general meeting. It's in our bylaws that if we do have any suggestions for revisions in our bylaws, they have to be presented to the guild as a whole 1 month prior to the date that they're actually voted on. That's what we're doing here tonight. It was already in your newsletter, so here's your quick and dirty. Section 4, we're going to delete 25%. This is what is in there. 25% of the members of the guild shall constitute a quorum, and this is right after we're talking about our elections. If you think about that, of the members, it doesn't say of the members present, it says of the members. If we have 350 members, what's 25%? There is no way we will ever have 25% of 350, or hopefully more in the future, that many members here at the meeting, and therefore we can't possibly meet this what it says in our bylaws. So that's the reason for just deleting that. And then the next one, a couple of these Dan Lender submitted, and I'll give you some of the reasoning behind that. This is simply some grammatical information, changing it to the woodworking shop and handle not being necessary in there. Not really a change in policy or anything. Go ahead, next one. But then some new things to be adding. Upon receipt of membership dues and completion of a workshop safety class, members will have full privilege to use the woodworking shop during open shop hours. All members have the responsibility to be aware of their surroundings and the inherent risk while in and around woodworking shop. If a member appears to not be able to adhere to or not attentive to safe tool usage, the member may either have their privileges restricted to hand tool usage only, or the member may be permanently banned from the shop tool usage. The reason for this being in there, this did come up for us, and we didn't really have any background or precedent to say how to deal with that. So it's hopefully will never be necessary, but I think it's a valuable addition to our bylaws. Next one. The woodworking shop is equipped for conducting educational and teaching classes for members and members personal usage. Members' personal usage does not extend to allowing the woodworking shop to be used to support any member's business use. This is another one that is actually in the Kansas City bylaws. And so the whole idea is we don't want people to be using our shop, that are members, to run their business and so on. That's not the purpose of us having our own shop at all, though. Okay? Next one. And this is, again, the same thing about the quorum bit. So delete and a quorum is present. So once again, it's just a matter of we can't possibly say that if that's in there, we can't do that because we can't ever have that many people. So if you actually look at them, the bylaws are in the the website and so on, under members only. So that's where you can actually see the entire bylaw. So I think that's the last one, isn't it? Okay, so you've seen it in the newsletter. We read it here. So next month, be prepared to vote on those things if you have any questions in the meantime. Okay. Rich Sanders, would you please come up here? So Rich is a longtime member of our guild, and he's a very continual participant in show and tell, his incredible shop woodworking capabilities. But one thing, I don't know whether you'd call it a hobby or whatever, but boy has he made a lot of toys. We talked about our toy program. There were 300 and some toys submitted tonight. Rich has submitted over 10,000 toys in his time here. 10,000 toys. Now, I don't know details of what's going on, but I know that he is cutting back and maybe kind of moving on, and won't be a part of us in the next future. So we wanted to recognize him and something for your small shop. It says, to Rich Sanders, in appreciation for the contributions to the St. Louis Woodworkers Guild toy program, over 10,000 toys donated. So. You want to say anything? You want to say anything?
I can't even get the brain going.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Okay, those of you who have show and tell items, go ahead and kind of form a line over here.
The newsletter, please see me after the meeting. There were a couple of members that came up that were at some of the classes that said they weren't getting the newsletter.
How can they contact you if they're watching online?
You can contact me at
Tell them your name.
at Grady, Grady, .Vaughn, VAUGHAN @gmail.com. So, or see me, folks here, see me after the meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Grady.
I am teaching my wife how to do woodworking, and she came up with a pattern, and she goes, I want to make this picture out of wood. How can I do it? So I showed her how to do everything, and this is what she did. I stood back, I told her everything how to cut, all of the angles. She thought it was, she goes, next time I do this, I'm gonna make sure that these angles are 45 degrees. Because she had a really fun time trying to figure out the angles. But with all my equipment, I just stood there and showed her one time, this is how you do it.
You did well.
And so, yeah, she did everything. Her sister's getting married next weekend, and I found this pattern of a cross that I made for her sister. I haven't bought the frame yet. It's going to be framed in black with a really bright green background. But this was just a neat cross pattern I found. It took me a couple hours on a scroll saw to do.
A couple years ago, you may remember there was a little estate sale down in Valley Park, and this fellow had a little shed just crammed full of wood. So I bought a bunch of black walnut, which I never had touched before. And you may recognize this from the Rockler flyer. It's a radio with Bluetooth in it, and if I can get the Bluetooth to work, let's see if it'll go.
Bluetooth mode. Bluetooth connected successfully.
So you get this. Now, I would tell you the hardest part was cutting the miters on these tiny little pieces. And there's grooves inside here for an inside liner and a baffle. And I'm disappointed to tell you that the FM doesn't work at all. It's I took it way out into the backyard thinking my Wi-Fi was messing it up, and it sounds like it's playing through a bag of potato chips. So I wouldn't recommend that. But if you want a Bluetooth radio, all I had to do was get 2 Forstner bits, because this top one takes a little one, and the speakers take like a 2 3/4 one, and they just plug in. And the little controller has all kinds of plugs in the back, and you just put it together, and the battery's on the back of the speaker, and they give you a wire to plug into a USB thing. Bob's your uncle, you got a little radio to listen to. So you can look at it later, I'll play it for you, but it's just music. It's not, you can put anything you want to. If you get it on if you can get it on Bluetooth, you can get it through here.
There you go.
Anyhow, I didn't bring a finished project, but it's a red bud root ball, and you don't ever get to see them hardly in this stage when they're working on it. So I just wanted to show you how I turned this, and you can see there were 2 trees actually growing. They were split. So I roughed it out, turning it about 200 RPM, because I was afraid it was going to come apart, but it's still pretty tight. And I wrapped that tape around it so when I was finishing the top end of it. And now it'll go into a vacuum oven and dry it completely, and do the epoxy resin to fill in all the cracks, and then be a finished product. But anyway, that's one of my favorite woods to turn. It glows under a black light. It'll fluoresce. And that's it.
I built this table for Home Sweet Home, okay? And I made a lot of mistakes on it. And you know, one of the things I've learned from woodworking is you have to figure a way around the mistakes, okay, and still make it work, okay? So this middle piece here is an oak end grain, like a cutting board, okay? I figured that would make, I love the look of that end grain. Okay, so I made the centerpiece of an end grain and then framed it and then put the oak pieces around it. Okay, but when I cut the cutting board in the middle, I cut it too thick. Okay, and I went, okay, it's all glued together. How do I make it thinner? And my table saw only goes, you know, 2.5 inches high, kind of thing. Okay, so I had to go all around it. Okay, 2.5 inches in, and then a Japanese handsaw. Okay, and the Japanese handsaw has a little bend to it, okay, you know, when you're pulling it back and forth. So the 2 sides, one was concave and one was convex, okay? And then I had to flatten it to put it in here, okay? So there was a lot of little things that added up to make this table, you know, difficult, okay? But it turned out, I think, really nice, okay? So, and one of the things I love about Home Sweet Home is it gives me a chance to try different things out, okay, that I haven't been done before. And we don't have a plan for a dining room table on Home Sweet Home, but we do, they do need those, okay? And most of those people are moving into maybe small apartments, so I try to make small dining room tables for them.
So we're talking about so many things. You might have read, hopefully you read the president's letter that I did and so on. We learned so many things when we went to Kansas City. Among them are maybe changing the sponsorship program, and Todd is working on that. We don't have time to really talk about it too much tonight, but just to give you an example, the Guild actually pays for the $50 gift certificate. Really? I mean, so that didn't come from Rockler. That $25 one did. So I think there, as far as making money for the Guild, that's in a category of things that we can do fairly quickly. Is to, I think we would have no trouble getting them to say that they should be doing that. So there's a whole different program that Steve's working on and so on that I think will benefit the Guild tremendously. Okay. So tonight's program, so we're just over an hour here, so bear with us. We didn't really coordinate, so I don't know, but I'm supposed to start with just talking about line inlay. There ain't no way that I can tell you how to do line inlay in 20 minutes. But to put in a plug, I do have a class on the inlay that usually is in the spring of the year. I already did it this year. So, but anyway, we'll kind of get started. So Don Turner is going to talk about the CNC elements, and then Bob Ryan is going to finish up. So this is a little bit of a hodgepodge and so on. So we each have a little thing to contribute. Okay, so line inlay. Go ahead and do the next picture. Line inlay is the process of doing something to enhance your piece. You build a product out of wood somehow, but to make it look prettier and to enhance it, as an example of one thing you can do is to do inlay. Line inlay means that this thing that you're putting in there is a line, either a straight line or a curved line, in this case a perfect circle and so on. This is called a Pennsylvania spice box that I did several years ago. And I will be talking about the different ways that you can accomplish this and so on, but the whole idea is enhancing what you're doing. You could kind of picture that you have one wood that's, let's say, a darker wood, like this is solid walnut. You have another wood that is much lighter and therefore complementary, or it shows up in the darker wood as an example, which in this case is holly. And yes, there is a holly tree, therefore it is holly wood that you can actually make. And so on. And in this case, what you see there is 100% either a straight line or a circle or a part of a circle. Everything is a straight line or a circle or a part of a circle. Go ahead and do the next one. That shows you opening up. I forgot to point out that the front one is a little more complicated, but it has 8 points. This is an example of 6 points. And something you could do with that is make it only 3 points, and then there's room to put in like initials. Steve Latta, who I learned this from, put his own initials and his wife's initials and their wedding date and so on in those particular places. So again, this is just another kind of pattern that one could make. Next, I used a similar kind of thing, and notice that I like walnut. And I like holly as really shows up and when you're doing it with walnut being the background. I made a jewelry box for each of 3 granddaughters. I didn't want them to be comparing them, so I made them all identical except they're 3 different woods, so they can't say that one is better than the other. But this one was the first one I did. Again, it's walnut and holly for the wood. Another one. And then I just gave the whole talk a while back on building this bow front chest in the Hepplewhite design. And it's hard to see on these pictures, but there is a line inlay all the way around each of the drawers to kind of enhance them. You could do that by itself. You could cut it off here, which is again a part of a circle. And then you could fill that part of the circle in, as I have done there, and put a little elliptical inlay at the bottom too. These are just 3 examples of things that I have done using string inlay and so on. Okay, next one. Just another picture of it. Maybe you can see a little bit better. That line that goes around. I pointed out to you the difficulty in having to do some staining and so on that unfortunately made the whiteness of holly not as white as I wanted it to be in the last slide, I think. Okay, so Steve Latta lives in Pennsylvania, and he developed that Pennsylvania spice box. That was his design and so on, as an example. But he's famous for the federal style of furniture building, in which line inlay is used very much. Now, he makes all his own tools, or he did to begin with. But then he got together with Lee Nielsen out east as well, and they came up with a little enhanced version of his tools that do. There's 4 of them if you got the whole group and so on. This particular tool is used for slicing the pieces of inlay material that is already hopefully to the right thickness that you want to begin with into approximately 3/32 of an inch wide. The hole that you're making is approximately 1/16 of an inch deep, and so if you put the inlay that you're putting in there, this piece of wood on its side, just a little bit wider than that, so it sticks up. What you do not want is to have your piece of inlay go below the surface, because that causes big problems. So this is just a slicer, and whereas this one is actually the straight tool. So basically, you're all familiar with a compass. A compass has a pencil on the end of a thing, and if you go around the corner, this is a radius, a circle, or a radius that's a part of a circle tool, and so on. You basically have a saw, a little miniature saw, instead of a pencil on the other end. So picture that when you use this tool, it is actually making a groove of a known depth. A 1/16 of an inch is what Steve has recommended, and so on. And this tool makes that groove 1/32 of an inch wide. Okay, then all you need is a piece of inlay, which is 1/32 of an inch thick, to fit in that groove that you've already made. So the ways that I know how to do this would be using these kind of tools and so on that we're talking a little bit about. But the other would be CNC, which Donna's going to be talking about. But the other would be, you can use a Dremel. So this is a Dremel fitted with a point that, whirling around, is exactly makes a groove of exactly 1/32 of an inch too. It sticks out, and so a half-inch material, half-inch MDF, you can adjust it so that it sticks out from that pattern that you have exactly a 1/16 of an inch. So that's what's going to make going into your piece of furniture, and so on. So you can make anything you want to. You take the half-inch MDF and make whatever design you want to, and then you could take a Dremel and so on and just follow your pattern and so on, and make your thing that way. So if you have anything that isn't a straight line or a perfect circle, then that's a way that you could do it if you don't have a CNC machine as well. This tool is made to thickness your inlay material. So if it isn't 1/32 of an inch, like you want it to be to fit in there, you can slide it through this groove. One is a little bit oversized, and the other one is right to the size. So it makes your piece exactly 1/32 of an inch. I have a source of getting Holly inlay, and I make sure that he has already micrometered the thickness, so I already know it's 1/32 of an inch. So I really don't use that tool, and I have a different method of doing slicing and so on too. Okay, so if we can start the video. So this is that design I showed you to begin with. This was my practice piece in making that design for the front of that Pennsylvania spice box. Okay, this is just the door of the Pennsylvania spice box is what we're making. This is Steve Latta, lives in eastern Pennsylvania, and he's just talking about the door and so on a little bit. And he's going ultimately on this particular video. And by the way, this is his video called Fundamentals Inlay, Stringing, Line, and Bury. We have this in our guild library, so you can check this out yourself. And it's several hours long if you really look through it to begin with. So we're only going to look at him doing one portion of this, but to illustrate what I just told you about how each of these tools may be used. So there's a corner. You have to have the corner set, and that's a part of a circle. And notice that they cross there in the middle, and they all come together with a little bit of a mitered fitting together of those pieces. So the order of doing things is important. Now I wish I could fast forward and stuff. Okay, here is the tool to make a straight line. It's a saw, basically. See it just sitting on your wood? There's a 90-degree angle for this to fit exactly where you want to, so it stays the same distance from the edge of your piece of wood the whole time you're doing it. So as you're going forward, and the saws are meant to go forward or backward. They can go either way, but he pretty much is just in one direction to begin with. It's adjustable. So this can go in or out, and therefore you can set the distance you want from the edge of your wood into your piece that you're putting the inlay in. So once you have it set, it's going to be that same dimension and on all four sides of this door, as an example. He's noticed those things in the corner. It's a part of a circle, but it stops short of going all the way to touching the other side there. That's the second tool, which is the radius maker. So it's like a compass with a saw on the end of it instead of a pencil. Although I do make the pencil marks ahead of time, so I have a rough idea of where I want that saw to end up being, though. So as you go forward or backward, doesn't really matter. You make your groove, which is, by the way, here's the bad news. This list of tools from Lee Nielsen is no longer offered by them. They had a big problem with COVID and so on. They really had to cut back. So even though I'm glad I have my set and so on, and I bet you could probably find some on eBay or whatever, I cannot tell you. I checked as recently as a few months ago when I did the actual class. They don't have. You can't get it from there, and I've confirmed with Steve Latta that indeed you can't do that. So look, this is basically the saw on a pivot point. The pivot point is wherever you have decided it is. So, and believe it or not, you might think that going with the grain is easier. It's not. Going cross grain is a lot crisper cut with this instrument and so on than when you're going with the grain. It kind of wants to jump into the grain itself. So it's good to have straight grain material. This is also adjustable. So again, you can make your circle as big as you need for your piece and so on. So once you get used to it, it's very important to get the corners the same depth all the way out to your line and so on. This is a little tool that comes in a little hook or one that's straight instead of the chisel or whatever he's using to make sure the corners are cut out. This fits right in there. Guess how thick this is? 1/32 of an inch. So it fits in that same groove, but it's just a way of kind of cleaning out your groove and so on. I use this a lot. So he's putting his piece of material in that slot. I think he already put the glue on. He just uses plain yellow glue. It's like a syringe, doctor's office, but it has a pointed kind of tip on the end of it. which makes it perfect for actually having your glue inside there. And as he just did, you just follow your line that's already there and fill it with glue, just plain old yellow glue. He is using a card scraper in this case, but you'll see later that you can also just use a chisel, and you'll see that here in just a second. Of course, in making the video, he's not really waiting long, but what you don't want is to have the glue not at least beginning to be set up. It's better to make sure it's really set up so that whatever you're doing doesn't pop your piece of inlay completely out and so on. So notice with this entire thing that you're doing, if you're making that big pattern like we did for the spice box, what you do not do is make all these cuts to begin with and then try to fit in your inlay material. You do one at a time, because if the glue is set up now, you're actually making the second cut right across that piece of inlay. Otherwise, it'd be very difficult to figure out how to, little 4 pieces instead of 2 pieces or whatever. So that's the order of doing things is very important. Is there any way to speed it up? Oh, no? Okay. That's glue being put in with that little injector that I showed you. He goes ahead and puts one end in, and that is chamfered on that end, and he cuts the other one before he pushes the whole thing in. He makes a line across here with a pencil, so he knows exactly where he can use his chisel to cut the end off. There's the straight line one. A little saw on the thing that is a 90-degree angle. Make it as big as you want to with the adjustability. And there he's pulling, where before he was pushing. It can push or pull. It doesn't really matter though. And to see how this goes together, and I think we'll quit. So instead of using the chisel like he's using now, that's why I like to have my set of 2 tools that fit right into that groove and so on to do that final clean out. And this is going to be mitered. These pieces, those pieces as well as those pieces are mitered, so they come together in the corner. Now this is for the video. He just put a little piece in there. Obviously, if you're doing the whole pattern like I showed you, you would have this line go all the way to the other end. So you'd have all 4 corners marked out and everything. It'd be silly to do it little bits. Hey, there you go. So even though he made a big deal about using the card scraper, this is what I do because it works. But what you don't want to do, this is what you don't want to do when it's still not dry, because you're likely to grab with the chisel and pull the thing out and so on. That's enough. We're getting into the next thing. Just a couple little things. Sorry you can't really see from back there as well. But this is where you really learn to use dividers as an example. You can't take this pattern and say this distance from here to here and here and here is whatever but you come up with. It's never going to be the same. You're never going to have it come out to being the same on the other end if you go around the circle and so on. So what you have to do is use a divider and just start wherever you want to. And you go all the way around, and this has got 8 points. And so you want that last one that you do to come out in that very same hole that you started with. If it doesn't, you have to keep going. You have to shorten it or lengthen or whatever until you finally have it so that last one of the 8 portions comes into that very dot. Otherwise, it's not going to be symmetrical all the way around. So that's what dividers are for. And if you have a circle that is so small that your holly is brittle enough that it can't go around that ellipse that you need to make, you can heat it up. So this is called a burn-in tool, used in finishers and so on. Different story, but you can also get, this is a round surface. You can actually get pieces of copper that make it a little smaller. The idea is you can have this feeler gauge, which is an automotive thing, and put it around the outside of your piece of inlay, piece of wood, and have it be a backing for your thing. And after this is heated, you pull it around this whatever you're using, whatever size you're using, and it ends up bending your piece of inlay so that it can get around that corner that you are making without it breaking in two. So, okay, so I'm going to quit and let Don take over. And I have all the instruments, so you obviously can't see from that distance. So anybody who wants to come and look and me to explain a little bit better and so on how we did things, I'd be happy to show you.
So I'm another twist in it. I kind of, for people like me who don't have as much talent as they do, I turn to technology. So I cheat a little bit. But it is a lot of fun. CNCs are just incredibly fun. So that's why I do presentations on them. So I've got some inlays. I'm going to pass some around. And we'll go ahead and get started here. So next slide. So there's a couple different ways to do it. You can use what's called an end mill. And it's basically a router bit that comes down here and that's straight cut off here. And you go from 16th, probably a 32nd, but 16th, and they have 8th, and they have a 1/4 inch, and they go on up. And so the end mills are real nice because they pull the chips out. So an up cut will pull the chips up, a down cut will pull the chips down. And then when it pulls it up, it can pull the wood up, so the down cut will make it real smooth. So you have to kind of play this game to figure out what you're really looking for. But for making the end mill type, I call it, it's just a very square inlay. And the square inlays look like this. There's a camera here. Can I bring it into the camera? Can you see it? But they're square inlays where the bit goes straight down, and then it cleans out the inlay. And then you can use the same kind of bit, and you can make the blank for it, or the pocket for it. So that was the inlay, and I call this the pocket, or you call that the male, and this is female. So these are examples of square inlays. Next slide. Oh, let's go back. There you go. So they're all at 90 degrees. The sharpness of the inlay is determined by the radius of the tool. When I made these inlays, I used a 16th inch tool. So it looks pretty square, but if you look at it, there's a little radius, but it's only a 32nd of an inch. So depending on how you want to cut it, you can cut these inlays out. The sharpness, it's not as sharp as the second type, but you can still get pretty decent text on these because they're pretty straight. So you make this, you carve this out, and then you make the inlay here. Next slide. These are the limitations. If you took this and blew it up and made it really big, this is an example of one where you use a straight inlay, and I cut it in half, and you can actually look at the side of it and see the straight leg coming down and how it goes down straight, and there's no angle at all. And so, but when you make these, you're limited by this radius, which is, in this case, I use a 16th inch. So it's pretty sharp, pretty decent, but you're not going to get that really sharp point. So you're limited by the inlay, what the machine can do. Again, it's 1/16 diameter. So this is what it looks like, and there's a cross section here. You can see how it goes down straight from the cross section. So you have to remember when you're doing the inlay. I made one, and this was, I was doing the V-carver, the second style, but I made it and it looks really nice looking. Unfortunately, I forgot to flip the inlay, and it's supposed to look like this, not like this. So you have to remember to flip it over, because remember, it's going to go in and it's going to drop in like this, so it has to either flip vertically or horizontally, depending on how you want to do it. Either way will work, but you've got to remember to get the negative of it so it'll fit in there. The other thing is, actually, I can pass these around too. I'll just pass all this stuff around. You got to pay attention to clearances. Let's go to the next slide, see if I have that in there. Okay, that's going to the V-carve. So the other thing is you got to provide a clearance. So I carved in the back of these. This one, it's got the negative and all that, but it has no clearance, and there's no way it's going to fit in there. It will not fit in there because it's the same size. So what you need to do is, in this case, I put a 7/1000 clearance in it. And so when you lay it on here, you can actually get the inlay, you can feel it around, and it pops in there. It's a little looser than the first time because I've pushed it in and out. But then it will actually fit in there, and it'll gives it enough clearance that you can actually put that in here. This one has 0 clearance, and there is no way it's going to fit in there. So I'll pass those around so you can see. The other point I want to make, just real quick, is make sure that when you, this is wood that I got out of my woods because we have endless trees, but I did a walnut inlay here, and the important thing to remember is make sure you pick a really good contrast on your wood, because when I put it in here, you can barely see it. It laid in there real nice, and it's a beautiful piece of wood, but you've got to figure out, you got to have a nice high contrast. And I made a sample of one, it's called high contrast, so you can really see it now. And this has got that eagle. This was done with the V-carve bit, which I'll get into next. So you can pass this around and see how that kind of blends in. It doesn't really stand out. I'll pass this around when I talk about the V-carve. Okay, so going to V-carve milling, this is the second type, I'll call it. And that's where you have a router bit, and it's got a point here like this. And this gives the CNC the ability to make really, really sharp, pointed corners, and you don't have any radiuses to deal with. You can get them different angles. You go from 90 degrees to 60 to 30. I've got ones that are 10 degrees. They look like needles. And you can, I was experimenting, and I did a 4-point font, and it carved it all out, and I couldn't read it until I got a magnifying glass, and by golly, you could actually read the 4-point font. But it was, so it can just get to the tiniest amount. The wider the bit, so if you go to a 90 degree, if you have a large thing you're making and you want to make it visible at a distance, if you're at 90 degree angle, you'll have 45 degrees on each side. So when it cuts down and does a V-carve, it won't go quite as deep, but it'll be wider. Now, if you have a narrower and narrower inlay you want, you go to a sharper, you go to a 60 and a 30 and on down. Like I said, I got the 10 that was just like a needle. And as you get sharper in the angle, the bit can go deeper and deeper and get down in there deeper and deeper as you get the angles start pulling together. So, but the 60 degree V-carve, that one gives you some really nice inlays, which is what I made with these here that I pass around. You typically set the depth to about 1/10 of an inch when you're carving out your inlay, and then you actually, once it carves the size of the inlay out, then you use it like a 16th inch or an 1/8 inch bit, and let it run around and clean around the middle of the inlay if you have extra space. Again, it's driven by the angle of the V-carve bit. Next slide. So to get the sharp corners, it does a little trick. use what's called the z-axis. So if you have a 3-axis CNC, you have Y, X, and Z is up and down. So when you come up to a corner, so you have a box here in the corner, and you want to make that super sharp point, what it does, when it creates the tool path, it'll go down, it'll run along, and then it'll go up, and then down, and then go further. So from the side, this is what it does, is it goes along, and the z-axis, it pulls it out, so the tip of that point comes right out to that tip there, and then you run it back down, and you go down, proceed with the carving. And from the top view, looking down on it, you'll see it coming along, it'll come up, down, and go down this way. So that's how it can get you that sharp point with a V-carve bit. So that's the little trick. So that's why I call this the Type 2, because you're using these tricks with these bits to carve that out. So what it'll do, it'll come around, and you saw that one I passed around, it'll cut out the V-carve part, and then if you've got more area that you want that's a flat area, then you come in there with a flat bit, and you carve out the rest of it with a regular end mill, that they call it. So the example is my better contrast. I had this little eagle here. You can see the little pointy points on the edge of the eagle from his feathers, and this was done with a V-carve bit. So provide that. And then I have a side view. This one had the contrast problem, but if you look at I cut out and did a section of it, you'll see that 60-degree V-bit here, and that's how I was able to get these boxes to be really sharp. And I did a Times Roman, I think, font, so you can make these really sharp points. The wood I had did have a little combination of some sapwood, so the N on the inlay is kind of faded because of the wood. But the whole point here was just to show that side view of what a 60-degree V-carve does. So you can get really, really sharp points here and make very fine inlays. Next slide. So the trick on doing a V-carve is there's some issues with when you cut the V-carve out. You can go in there and you'll cut and make a flat depth out of it. It's to create the tool path. And what it'll do is they'll go in there, and the CNC says, okay, you want to V-carve? It'll cut this out, make this out. You clean this out with the end mill. You make the inlay, and you set the same depth. And what'll happen is it'll cut it on the exact same line. So when it comes together, it won't fit in the pocket. And of course, we have a sad face here because it doesn't fit together. So what do you do about that? Because it did exactly what you told it to do. It made it exactly match, and those points will come in right together. So the next slide, the solution is you tell the machine, okay, cut this inlay, but the flat depth is here, but it has what's called a start depth. So if you have the surface here and you have a start depth, you say if the start depth is 0, it's here. But if the start depth is something other than 0, it's going to be slightly down, okay? And then it'll cut. So it'll come down slightly further, and then it'll cut the inlay. So the trick here is if you set a start depth, I'd set it to 0.9. If you make these the same, it'll completely fill the middle of it. So depending on how much space you want here for your glue, you can set these numbers to get you the depths that you want. These are pretty darn close to being the same, so there isn't much glue spot down here. If you're more conservative, you can have a little bit bigger area, but then when you go and you knock on it, you can hear it's kind of hollow if you don't get all the glue in there. But it's not a precise method. You just come up with ways that work. So what you did is when you specified to start at a start depth, what it's doing is when it comes down on the z-axis, it thinks it hasn't hit the material yet, but you're lying to the machine. You're telling it, no, it's down here. So what it does is it'll go down deeper, and it'll make this inlay smaller. And depending on how much you want to go, how much deeper you want to go here, is how much deeper it's going to fit into the inlay. And so then you can control exactly how much glue space you want in the bottom of the inlay. And I selected a pretty small little area. But it goes in there, so when it cuts it out, you've faked it out into thinking that the surface is slightly below it. So when it comes in, it'll make this inlay smaller, so it will in fact fit. And because it fits, you get a smiley face. So So it comes in really handy, but you can completely control this gap here by how far down you take this inlay, how far you tell it to go down on its start depth. So that's the little trick on on doing the V-carve inlays. So those are just some things that I was going to show you, but those are basically the two styles that you could use. Again, if you have a small 16th inch bit, when you see it come around, it has some pretty decent corners, but it's not perfect, and you can't do these little strings and very small, intricate patterns. And that's all I've got in my little magic box. I don't know, this is just like the other one, so I'll leave that in here. And okay, that's it. So we'll go to Bob.
My inlays were, I built them from basically using raw materials and producing my own. The basic tools, table saws, rip saws, cross-cut saws, and I don't know if you can see any of these. This is I'll send these around, but they're just pieces of wood that I that I glued together and cut. People ask me, why did I make my own instead of just buying them? Well, I'll tell you why. If you're going through all the trouble of making a beautiful piece of furniture, you want to be able to have a nice piece of inlay that corresponds with that piece of furniture perfectly. And so you can produce your own, you can use whatever materials you want in that, and you get whatever results you want. So in this case here, I use some lace wood and some maple. And why don't you send that around the other way? And that worked out very, very well for that. In this particular case, I just used a piece of yellow heart, and that worked out very well. And you may just want to set that inside of a piece of walnut, for instance, and that really produces a really nice effect. And plus, on these particular types, they're very flexible. So if I want to put a bend in, let's say I'm doing a clock face or something, I can put that in there like that, or I can steam it even and get a little bit more out of it, and I can produce a real nice effect on that. And that works out real well for that. These are a couple of inlays that I produced. This is a real rigid piece, and this is made for like a really thick table, like if you're doing I don't know, like an acrylic table or something like that. And this is made out of walnut and maple. And once again, I made a bunch of little squares up like this. And and just a matter of gluing them all together. So a lot of patience, but it produces really, really nice effects. And that's what you're after there. If you want to get a lot more out of the strips, you make those pieces wider. And that way you can get like maybe 20 or 30 pieces of inlay out of that. And that works out real well. There's a piece of walnut and maple, and here's a piece of bloodwood and maple as well. I used this to cut because the inlays are very, very small. And what I use to cut them, to get that really small cut, is I put this into the groove. This fits into the groove of my table saw, and it'll slide. So it'll slide so it sits in the groove, and it'll just slide, and you move your table saw fence. You leave this stationary, but you you make a cut, then of course you got to move your fence because that piece is now a little bit smaller. So you just tighten it, you leave that tight, but you move this fence up and you get the exact same cut every single time. And that works out very, very well. And then I used, they asked me what type of glue I use. Well, I use several different types of glue. You can use a CA glue, and that works very, very quickly. I prefer using just a simple yellow glue. I use Tidal Bond 2, and I just took a cup like that, and I just cut it out, and then I pour some glue in there. I just use my finger, and I smear glue all over the surface, and then you've got to take and glue it all, clamp it all together. And that, once again, that takes a little bit of practice. I used a piece of plywood, and then I use a fence along there, and that gives me a 90 degrees, and then I put a piece of painter's tape down, and that keeps the glue from sticking to the wood. Works out very, very well. Blue painter's tape. And then I just let that dry, 4 or 5 hours, and then I move on to the next step. But you can produce some really, really nice effects. I mean, that piece there is a checkerboard effect, but I can produce diamonds and star patterns. And if you go on YouTube, you can see a whole bunch of being made. And that's where I got this idea from. So, and it worked out really, really well. So I put that into my furniture. So, but that's pretty much my presentation. I want to keep mine short because I know we're running a little long here. So, thank you very much.
So thank you, you two, and sorry we didn't coordinate as much, and we're sorry the first part of the meeting went longer than usual, but we got through it and so on. Bob, I think I would call those bands more than inlay, right? Yeah. So instead of actually turning it on the side and fitting it into a 1/32 of an inch, whatever, you actually lay it on, it becomes an edge, so it's called edge banding, which is still an inlay. So you're excavating something the width of this band that you're making and so on, instead of making a groove and you turn it sideways and so on to put it in. It's still, that's inlay. It's just called banding and so on, if I'm getting the idea better. Okay, just a couple things to finish. Please come up, and if you have any interest at all, please, we want to go ahead and, because I'm getting embarrassed that it's been 2 months now and I haven't got back with the Astronomical Society guy as to the progress we've made. He's a very, very nice gentleman. So please pick up some of the patterns or templates if you think that you can do that, so we can start getting some that I can give to the Astronomical Society guy. Please, if you have any interest in turning tools, if you have time to look through, that Steve is so nicely at least categorized and put a little price tag on them. You hopefully will find some things that if you do any kind of carving and so on, that might come in handy for you. I forgot something. Brian Ellison, who's our immediate past president, has been our longtime webmaster in charge of our website and so on, and he is going to be stepping down from that position, as in expeditiously, like now. So anybody here or who is online that may have some experience with websites, doing and designing as well as kind of maintaining and so on, please let us know, because we are going to need to have somebody replace him in that position. It's something that we didn't really talk about. It's for future use. We're thinking about doing some kind of classified ads.
Yeah, classified ads and really getting some support with IT.
What's the name of that thing that we have?
The newsletter is made and sent out with MailChimp. So if there's anybody with any MailChimp experience or knowledge of that software, we'd appreciate you raising your hand and saying, hey, I've used MailChimp before. I can maybe take a look at this.
So we already
Grady
have
and
it.
I are the MailChimp guys right now, and we'd like to get a group together and explore the classified ads piece as well.
So we already have this capability. So again, we're asking, among other things, to ask for volunteers for looking into those things that we're going to have a need for in the very near future. It seemed like there was one other, The other thing, Bill Shukat and brought in a possible, we're getting into, do we want to get into the business of actually helping people produce some woodworking things for the profit of the guild? No question that Kansas City has done a lot of their things of being able to advance as much as they have by way of actually making things, building things, selling them, and getting the profit back to the guild. So we need to talk whether we want to even get in that business, but if we do, we already have a project kind of in front of us that seems like it would probably be fairly doable. So you may be hearing more about that. So we're going to have, in addition to our regular board meeting, a separate board meeting just to discuss things that we learned at Kansas City that may or may not apply to us. So stay tuned. Okay, anybody have anything else? Anything else I've forgotten? Yes, sir.
Hello. So I know this is not the wood that everybody wants for the most part, but I do had about a 6-foot wide cottonwood tree come down, and I know the carvers are interested in it, but if anybody wants it to work with or it makes good firewood for a fire put outside, just come see me, let me know. You can get a trunk full, bring a flatbed trailer, I'll load it with the tractor. I've probably got 30 or 40 tons of it laying on the ground.
I didn't hear the kind of wood.
It's cottonwood.
Cottonwood.
It's
Got it.
junk
I know
wood for the most
cottonwood.
part, but if you want it, it's free.
There'll be less cotton thingies floating around your house since it's down. Anybody else have any business? And apologize for, it's only 8:45. It isn't beyond what many of our meetings have been. So any other things that need to be brought up? So please come up and take advantage of looking at the carving tools and the templates for making the parts for the telescope holder. So thank you very much.